This evening on First Alert Weather Extra, we bring you more updates on Hurricane Idalia as it continues to ramp up ahead of Florida landfall. We also get a first-hand look at how communities in the Big Bend are preparing.
Plus, as extreme heat continues to affect the country, find out what California County is doing to prevent wildfires.
And the new program NASA is implementing to figure out the effects of air pollution in North America.
WBRC Fox 6 News. First Alert Weather Extra starts now.
Hey, welcome into Weather Extra. Chief Meteorologist Wes Wyatt.
And meteorologist Lauren Linehan. Thank you for joining us this evening. A lot to talk about in Weather Extra.
Yeah, certainly is, Lauren. Hurricane Idalia moving in. One of the big things that we're watching with this is it's moving into an area where we have not documented a major hurricane.
Yeah, the Appalachian Bay is also a very vulnerable coastline. You have a very shallow continental shelf there, and it's low-lying swamp area for a lot of that. So that's just asking for trouble. I mean, when you see 12 to 15 feet of storm surge in the forecast, that can definitely raise some concerns.
And it's looking like today, one change from yesterday, it seems like, and we showed our model last night, that barren high resolution model was showing that track favoring that western zone, and it looks like it is going to favor the more western portion of the cone of uncertainty.
Yeah, just as we've been following Idalia today. I mean, it hasn't yet made that turn more to the northeast. That could eventually happen by tomorrow morning, but right now, anywhere from as far west as Apalachicola to as far south as Cedar Key need to be on alert.
Certainly need to be on alerts. That's what we're tracking right now. Obviously, the next big thing is tracking Hurricane Idalia. Let's get to our weather graphics here as we show you the latest advisory on this system as it moves to the north. And now you can see on radar, the center of circulation, there's a chance this grows into a major hurricane before making landfall. But look at the far-reaching impacts. You can see east of the center, that's the wetter side of the storm. You've got the south flow, so we get these bands of rain that move north, and then you also deal with wind shear with a tropical system like this, especially once these outer bands start to encounter land areas, so that can cause tornadoes. So there's that threat, as well as the risk for some flooding as this all wraps in from south to north. The tropical storm force winds extend out about 160 miles from the center circulation. The hurricane force winds are rather confined, 25 miles out from that center, but we'll feel those winds in areas across the Big Bend of Florida and quite possibly right on through Tallahassee. That's an area where we could see widespread tree damage in those areas as the system moves inland. But this is a fast mover. It's moving north at 16 miles per hour. Kind of reminds me, as far as how fast it's moving, reminds me a lot of Michael, which was a fast mover as that system moved north. But Michael moved in closer to Mexico Beach and further west, and actually caught parts of Panama City as it moved north. You can see this is moving east of that location, Keaton Beach area, and back in towards Cedar Key. Those areas will be heavily impacted. And what's interesting is as it continues moving north, I mean, this is going to have big time impacts, at least tropical storm force winds, Savannah, Charleston, Wilmington areas. It moves offshore and it may start to turn again. Yeah, we're going to have to watch it over the weekend, see what happens with this. It could get rather interesting there, but looking at the storm surge potential, you know, every tropical system is unique in its own way. And I think one of the big stories coming out of what happens with Idalia will be the storm surge, because there will be areas, I know this map shows 9 to 12 feet, but there are some updated concerns where we could see up to 15-foot storm surge in a few areas. I mean, just think about how tall you are. Think about these numbers that we're mentioning here as far as the upswell of water that is going to move in. I mean, the shape of the coastline, as Lauren mentioned, the continental shelf, the depth of the water, a lot of different variables go into play here. And there's even a concern, Cedar Key, that island may get cut off with all this rain or all this water that's going to rush in there in a hurry tomorrow morning. So it's so critical, folks, all along the west coast of Florida here, north of Tampa, all the way to Indian Pass, where we have those hurricane warnings in effect. Heed these warnings and evacuate. Check out those evacuation orders and follow those, and follow the plans that have been laid out from local municipalities, because what's going to happen here, this is going to move in so quickly tomorrow morning, it's going to be too late to react, especially along these coastal areas as all that rain happens. And notice there's also going to be 3 to 6 foot storm surge areas along along the east coast. As this system tracks across South Georgia, it pulls in the flow out of the south, so we'll also deal with those heavy impacts there. This look at the forecast wind gust potential. This is just one model. This is from the GFS, and this will actually, as we get more data and as the hurricane intensifies, these numbers just go up. But one thing you can tell is even as it moves north, it's moving so quickly, we'll deal with some of those stronger winds as this moves into southern Georgia, even hurricane force wind gusts. As for us here across central Alabama, we're going to be on the drier side of the system. That said, we still have quite a moisture field that's in place in areas to the, especially south and east. We have storms and showers quite widespread, our southern areas. There's a chance some of this may try to develop further north going into this evening. So do stay weather alert for the possibility of a shower or storm, but you can clearly tell the greatest chance for rain is starting to become more focused in areas off to the south. This is what it looks like from Red Mountain right now. I mean, we've got some sunshine out there, but just stay alert for this evening for showers and storms. I think as we move into the day tomorrow, what's going to happen is we'll start to see most of this wet weather staying in areas well south and east. But that's the latest on Idalia. We'll talk a lot more about that system, plus get into the 7-day forecast. But as Idalia continues to gain strength before making landfall, Fox News correspondent Rebecca Castor is in Bel Air, and she's going to give us some give us some insight on how folks in that area are bracing for the impact and making preparations.
Idalia is expected to keep gaining strength as it continues barreling towards Florida's west coast.
Time is running out for Florida communities preparing ahead of Idalia, with folks rushing to fill sandbags, board up windows, and stock up on last-minute essentials.
This one's different. It just has a ominous feeling about it.
This is the scene Idalia left behind in Cuba, the system striking the island as a tropical storm Monday, triggering flooding and prompting evacuations. But forecasters predict Idalia could turn into an even more dangerous Category 3 hurricane by Wednesday morning, when it's expected to make landfall along Florida's Gulf Coast.
This one looks like it's a biggie.
Besides heavy wind and rain that officials warn could lead to massive power outages, Idalia is also threatening to bring critical storm surge as high as 11 feet to some low-lying areas.
We have mobilized 1,100 National Guardsmen, and they have at their disposal 2,400 high water vehicles as well as 12 aircraft.
Dozens of counties are already under a state of emergency.
We have shelters, we have ways of keeping you safe, but you have to listen to what the experts are saying and act right now.
Meanwhile, Idalia is upending air travel ahead of its arrival, with Tampa International Airport suspending commercial flights Tuesday until any potential damage from the storm is assessed.
Idalia is expected to keep moving inland after making landfall, bringing heavy rain and wind to parts of Georgia and the Carolinas later this week. In Bel Air, Florida, Rebecca Castor, Fox News.
And joining us now to explain the scene on the ground in Tallahassee is Gray Television's Florida Capitol Bureau reporter Corey Butler. Let's listen in for an update.
Yeah, right now there are more than 5,500 National Guards members that will be deployed by the time this storm makes landfall tomorrow. There are also tankers full of fuel, primarily in Central Florida. Those tankers will primarily focus on refilling gas stations that are along evacuation routes to make sure everyone can get to safety. And there's also plenty of gas at the ports, and the routes, again, are priority. Tolls are right now free along the west coast north of Tampa.
All right, still ahead on First Alert Weather Extra, we explain the process behind retiring hurricane names and which letters in the alphabet are least likely to be reused.
And also, we are tracking some storms across central Alabama tonight ahead of Idalia's landfall. And we'll continue to track wildfires not just here in the U.S., but across the globe. First Alert Weather Extra. We'll be right back.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome into Good Day, Alabama.
A new morning comes with preparing right, because while you slept, news broke.
We have new information from that breaking news that happened this morning.
While you head out, the storm we gave you the first alert for is on its way in. And as the key turns the ignition, your shorter route to work is being found.
Avoid 459 southbound completely because of a crash.
A new morning means everything you need for a good day is on Good Day, Alabama, always on your side.
First Alert traffic you need to get you there safe and on time. Tomorrow morning, everything you need for a good day is on Good Day Alabama.
You're late, out the door, and on the go. Don't worry.
Good Day Alabama continues all morning long.
And wherever you watch, this is what you need to know right now.
More reporters on the streets with more hours of news when you need it. Everything you need for a good day is on Good Day Alabama. Knowing first is everything. First Alert Weather.
Welcome back to First Alert Weather Extra. Meteorologist Matt Daniel joins us now explaining the meaning behind the Saffir-Simpson scale and how it relates to hurricanes.
We are talking about the hurricane season really ramping up. We're tracking multiple named storms out there, and I want to give you an update on what the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale really means. Of course, it mainly focuses on the wind speeds, the sustained wind speeds, pretty much within the eye of the storm. So, as you know, there's a lot more to hurricanes than just wind. But let's go ahead and talk about what the definitions behind it. When you have a Category 1 hurricane, that means you got winds between 74 and 95 miles per hour, and that can be some dangerous winds, but you don't expect a lot of damage when it comes to wind. You're going to get a lot of wind and rain, and of course some minimal storm surge. So this is the appearance of a Cat 1, but when you get it to a Cat 2, it starts to get pretty strong. You can get some extreme winds and get some extensive damage. Those wind speeds are between 96 and 110 miles per hour. When a hurricane has winds above 110, it becomes a major hurricane. So that's a Category 3 or higher. And that's when you really see some major impacts depending on where the storm makes landfall. So you can see the storm surge becomes greater. The winds become greater. You're going to need a lot of flying debris everywhere, and we can get some pretty extensive and devastating damage. And then when you get to a 4, that's some serious business. You're getting a lot more energy. The storm surge becomes even more dominant, and the wind can knock roofs out, destroy homes and above. And that's when winds are right around 130 to 156 miles per hour. When a hurricane has sustained winds right around 157 or greater, that's when it becomes a powerful Cat 5, and that is when it becomes catastrophic. When you see hurricanes like Hurricane Andrew, for instance, it was a small hurricane, but it had some intense winds right along the center of the storm, and it just completely destroyed and leveled a community with so much wind. But then you have to also remember, if you have a large storm, for instance, like Katrina, it made landfall as a Category 3, but before that, it was a large Cat 5 in the Gulf, and it's all that energy as a Cat 5, all that water moved along the Gulf Coast and created some insane amounts of storm surge. So we always want to stress when it comes to hurricanes, yes, people want to focus on the category and the wind, but there's so much more to hurricanes, including the storm surge, coastal flooding, and of course, inland flooding, and even an isolated tornado threat. So definitely gonna have to prepare for all these kind of impacts for the Florida coastline, especially the Big Bend area, and even farther inland into South Georgia, where they could see some heavy rainfall, flooding, and an isolated tornado threat.
All right, thanks a lot, Matt. This also leads into the topic of retired hurricane names due to their extremely devastating and deadly impacts. When a storm name is retired, it's removed from the official name list and can't be used in a given ocean again. 96 storm names have been retired since 1954, and of those storms, 14 were ice storms. Something about those ice storms, which is the most retired of any letter, with 12 being retired within the past 22 years. This is due to ice storms often forming during the peak of hurricane season. Second most common retired names are F names, with 10 overall. Can certainly think of some of those powerful hurricanes like Ivan. I certainly remember that one, Lauren.
Yeah, Wes, and as we take a journey across the Atlantic, taking a break from the tropics briefly, we've been talking a lot on Weather Extra lately about wildfires across not just the U.S. but the globe. And after wildfires burned across Greece, a new finding shows that the total area burned is larger than, get this, New York City. It was reported by the Copernicus Emergency Management Service. The wildfires burned an area of 312 square miles in Alexandropolis, which is 12 square miles larger than the city of New York. The fires are still burning in that area as of today, and it is declared the largest ever recorded blaze in the European Union. While in the U.S., new information from Maui, where Hawaii's electric utility is responding to a lawsuit that blames them for the massive fire that killed at least 115 people and destroyed the historic town of Lahaina. Hawaiian Electric Company is acknowledging that its power line started a wildfire, but blames firefighters for its spreading, accusing fire crews who first responded for declaring the blaze contained and leaving the scene. A second wildfire then broke out nearby. Maui County is suing the utility for failing to shut off power preemptively when strong winds were forecast for the area. And as the heat continues to ramp up in other parts of the country, some communities in California are preparing for a power outage, all in an effort to beat the heat. Madison Keevy explains.
We do crank the AC. We also try and go in between the AC and windows.
A sign that it's hot in Yolo County. Add in high winds and dry vegetation and get a fire watch.
I just read a headline on my phone. I didn't read anything about it, but it just said shut-offs likely, power shut-offs likely.
That warning straight from PG&E. 8,000 customers in 7 counties might get their power shut off early Wednesday morning as part of a public safety power shutoff. The program implemented by PG&E and other state utilities in the wake of destructive wildfires, like the deadly Camp Fire in 2018, blamed on PG&E's power lines.
We're learning that it's becoming the new norm, I think, but you got to stock up on a lot of things.
That was back in 2019, when 800,000 Californians had their power shut off by PG&E. So what's changed that makes this latest warning a fraction of that number?
Switches along circuits to better reduce the footprint. And we've also contracted with a variety of helicopter companies so that we can quickly patrol the power lines after the wind event has passed to ensure it's safe to restore power.
Now, unlike 2019, PG&E says it can better isolate parts of the circuit with switches. And instead of Yolo County being left in the dark, around 30 customers could be impacted.
But all I know is that, hot means power gets shut off probably.
Well, coming up next on First Alert Weather Extra, we check back in with Chief Meteorologist Wes Wyatt for an update on our 7-day forecast and, of course, all things Idalia. I'll take you beyond the 7-day, and we'll also look at how NASA and NOAA are banding together to help combat things like air pollution. But first, let's look at today's almanac.
We heard the first alert. Mom says we have to go. She says I don't have time to grab any more toys.
Need to be in your tornado safe place. Get there right now as you have.
We have to get to our safe place because sometimes when you hear the siren, it's too late. That's why she says knowing first is everything.
We know weather can be grab the umbrella or jogging shoes, but it's so much more. It's a science, an art, led by knowledge and experience.
And no one has more of that than a WBRC First Alert weather team.
Warning you first with more hours committed to you. And the first forecast built to see weeks, days, and even minutes ahead, right down to where you live. From the team you trust on your favorite screen.
Doing the weather better. The WBRC First Alert weather team always on your side.
The First Alert is more than a warning. It's a promise. A promise to get you out of harm's way with plenty of time to spare. 4 walls and a roof can be replaced. Lives can't. That's why knowing first is everything. First Alert Weather.
All right, welcome into First Alert Weather Extra Super 7-day forecast. We've got on there, you can see Idalia moves to the east of us. By the weekend, we're going to have some dry weather coming back. Hot weather for kickoff over in Tuscaloosa. College football heading down to Jordan-Hare, 91 degrees there at kickoff. We're going to be dealing with some hot weather this weekend. Monday for Labor Day, highs in the low 90s. But right now, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday look dry. But of course, we're keeping a close eye on that hurricane about to make a landfall tomorrow morning. Hurricane Idalia. That system is expected to move into Appalachia Bay, and as it moves to the north, that's one area where we haven't documented a major hurricane making a landfall. So there will be some significant impacts there, significant storm surge, wind, flooding. No issues, though, for Alabama as that system stays off to the east. And look where it goes. It moves across South Georgia, impacts places like Augusta, Savannah, looks like Charleston, Wilmington, moves off the east coast and may start to do a little turn there by Sunday. We'll need to keep an eye on it out there over the Atlantic as that system continues on to the east. As for the next 24 hours, this is what the Barron model is showing, and this is where it was kind of pinpointing last night. It was bringing this thing in just south of Tallahassee. You can see Keaton Beach and back in towards Cedar Key. All those areas will deal with some of the roughest weather as this starts to approach later on tonight and through the early morning hours. And then it lifts in right across Valdosta, moves in towards Savannah and Charleston, and then the drier air flows in behind the system, and that's what we're going to feel tomorrow night. We'll actually enjoy some very tranquil conditions tomorrow evening, a nice breeze out of the north as that system passes by. Also watching Hurricane Franklin, that's out in the Atlantic. That system will weaken as it moves further north. A new tropical depression, number 11, actually formed today out over the central Atlantic. May grow into a tropical storm, but both of those systems staying out over the Atlantic. No concern about moving into the Gulf of Mexico. So for now, I know we're talking a lot about the hurricane, but most of the wet weather that we're seeing today is starting to become more confined to areas to the south and east. You can see Coosa County, Chilton County, Bibb County areas still have quite a bit of rain further north. Not a lot happening. It looks like rain showers and thunderstorms. You can see we had one storm that popped up near Lay Lake and that dissipated. We have some development though starting to happen back in towards Centerville. This may try to develop closer to places like Tuscaloosa and Birmingham. So just stay weather alert. You may get a rumble of thunder well past supper time this evening, but the chance for wet weather by tomorrow afternoon is certainly going to drop off. We're going to see a lot of this tomorrow is going to be mostly southeast of our area. But as we look ahead to tonight, you can see to the east there, still that possibility of some showers and storms. We get these surges of moisture out ahead of the tropical system moving in across the region. That's going to keep things kind of unsettled. There's a front stalled out, so we're kind of in what we call a convergence zone here where we get these scattered storms through the overnight and tomorrow morning. But the weekend, again, trending drier Saturday and Sunday. Lots of sunshine, highs in the low 90s, overnight lows in the 70s, and looking ahead towards Labor Day. So even though the heat kind of backs off tomorrow, it looks like we may see highs in the low 80s for parts of the area, perhaps a few upper 50s to the far north early on Thursday, but it won't last long. Again, the heat coming back for the weekend. And by the way, UAB forecast Thursday night, we've got kickoff. Looks like some dry weather conditions, so not too bad at least for the UAB game, but certainly playing for some hotter weather for all the big games coming up on Saturday. And how about the heat going into September? Well, let's check in with meteorologist Lauren Linehan as we go beyond the 7-day forecast.
Yeah, Wes, well, we may have that brief little cool down a couple of mornings this week with temperatures in the 60s, but it will be short-lived. You can see the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook does feature above average heat once again in the forecast. forecast. So as we look at those potential high temperatures into next week, we're talking maybe low mid 90s. So not too ridiculous, but it's certainly something we're going to be keeping an eye on, and then looking very mild next week as well in the mornings. Hopefully it won't be too ridiculously humid, but I think this front will come through and help to at least lessen the humidity a bit. But you can see as far as rainfall outlook going into September, notice across a good portion of the country, and that does include us here in Alabama, the potential for below average precipitation. Now I will say that's not unusual as we go into September. September and October, outside of any tropical systems, tend to be two of our driest months here in Alabama. So this is kind of right on cue with what we would expect. Well, getting away here from Earth's surface, we are talking about NASA this evening and how they're teaming up with NOAA to measure air pollution. They will be conducting a mission to see the effects of pollution on the ground after measuring air quality earlier this year. Ashley Nanfria has more.
It may be an unusual sight as a large plane soars only 1,000 feet overhead. But inside, researchers are on an important mission as they tackle air pollution.
We can understand the science behind air quality much better than before.
The project is called Aroma, and it studies how air quality has changed over the years at a higher detail.
There's a lot of new sources that we haven't seen in the past.
From the East Coast to the West, NOAA and NASA are focusing on cities with the highest air pollution, and the Central Valley made it to their 2023 list.
It's dominated by agricultural emissions, by oil and gas. There's a lot of transportation. There's also transport into the valley. So there's a lot of things that are happening in this area that are somewhat unusual. And it's also a valley, so it keeps the pollution in.
Researchers flew overhead last week in NASA's DC-8 aircraft, equipped with 30 different instruments to study air quality and chemistry.
In the Central Valley specifically, we're looking at compounds like ammonia, like methane. Those are often from agricultural.
Collecting up-to-date data on which pollutants are causing the most impact.
Volatile chemical products are a large source of pollutants into the atmosphere. So that's day-to-day products that we all use. So those are personal care products, cleaning products, prints, inks, paints on the wall.
What's collected now will help researchers improve the future of air quality and how it's forecasted.
To improve the science that's needed for future modeling, for future understanding of what regulations actually make sense.
And scientists are also taking a closer look at cities like Chicago, New York, and Toronto to identify neighborhoods that tend to have unhealthier air. Well, a positive note this evening, Atlantic puffins are on the comeback in Maine. The clownish seabirds with colorful bills had their second consecutive rebound year for chicks, even in the face of climate change. This encouraging news comes after scientists were worried the warm waters could jeopardize the kind of fish the birds needed to feed their young. But the Audubon Society says there are now as many as 3,000 of the birds nicknamed the sea parrots. Oh, we love a good sea parrot, and we always love a good sea parrot comeback story. Well, we are going to continue to be tracking not tropical storm anymore, Hurricane Idalia. We actually just got in an update from the National Hurricane Center that it is continuing to strengthen with max sustained winds now at 105 miles per hour, likely going to be making landfall somewhere along the Florida Big Bend tomorrow morning. So we'll be tracking it tonight. Make sure you tune in with us on First at 9. Chief Meteorologist Wes Wyatt and I will have updates. Download the WBRC First Alert weather app. If you have friends or family in North Florida, South Georgia, make sure you check in on them and that they do have those preparations in place. And join us here on Weather Extra every weeknight at 6:30 on your favorite streaming platform. And in less than 2 weeks, we'll be on TV right after Fox 6 News. I'm meteorologist Lauren Linehan. Have a safe and happy Tuesday evening.